So I'm going to use the Diaz Lopez case to kind of explain to you, in a broad sense, the the whole notion of the best evidence rule. And as the case describes to you, the best evidence rule really is not what it says. You don't have to produce only the best possible evidence to prove a proposition. We saw that come up in the context of relevance itself. It doesn't have to be the best possible thing so long as it advances the ball in the direction that the proponent of the evidence needs, even marginally. Subject to 403, as you'll recall, if it wastes the court's time more than it advances the ball, substantially prejudices substantially wastes the time, substantially prejudices the opponent's case more than it advances the ball, then 403 would kick it out. But understand the best evidence rule really is a rule about requiring the original of something to be produced. So whether that's a writing, whether that's a recording, you have to produce the original unless certain things are true, unless the original has been destroyed. And that takes us to rules 103 through 105. 104 says, look, if the original has been lost, and or if you can't get a hold of the original because it's too far away, it's in Zimbabwe or something like that, then or your opponent has the only copy that's in existence, then in those types of situations, you're allowed to produce a copy so long as there's no reason to doubt the original or the copy fails to adequately describe what the original is. Xerox copies are also permitted. So admissibility of duplicates, that's rule 1003. So basically, a real easy way to look at this is that if there is, say, a contract, you've got to bring that contract in rather than letting someone testify to it. Or as opposed to bringing in a memo that claims to summarize the terms of the contract. A Xerox copy of the contract will work just fine. So what are we doing with this requirement? We basically are forbidding, we're forbidding things that are written down or recorded that summarize the terms of something as opposed to bringing the thing in itself. If you want to testify to what's in it and you're subject to cross-examination, okay, that's fine. But you cannot bring in something that claims to fully describe what's in a contract, for instance. We're going to get to later to summaries of like large amounts of data. That's different. But if you have something that claims to represent what the original document says, you can't bring that in. You've got to bring the original in because there will be questions of transcription. The rule was created in a world prior to Xerox machines, so we were worried about transcription errors in a way we aren't in a Xerox world. So this doesn't apply to Xerox or copies or whatever you want to call them that are made with the machine. It does apply to anything that attempts to summarize, categorize, reproduce, but not verbatim the original text or recording or whatever. So the question then becomes in Diaz Lopez, what happens when you're saying that something does not exist? So in the Diaz Lopez case, what kind of best evidence applies when your proof is something does not exist? So in Diaz Lopez, we are looking at information in a computer database. So question number one, what is the best evidence for the data itself in the database? What are the requirements of Rule 1002 for items that are contained in a database? And as you learn in this case, if you print out the information from the database, or if you have it on a screen somewhere where the jurors can look at it, that is the best evidence of what actually is in the database. But what about when something is not in the database? And we have seen this before when we looked at absence of public records, when we looked at the case where the judge supposedly had sat and gotten paid for it, but there were no records indicating that he'd served on a judge on the days for which he claimed pay for being a substitute judge. Do you have to bring in computer data to show that something doesn't exist? You have to show the data itself and let the jury see that it's not there. Or can you do what the court did in that public records case, where the person testified to the fact that the records were not in the public documents? And you can do exactly the latter. You are allowed to say, I searched the database. Here are the parameters I used. In doing this, it would have come up. It didn't come up. Now, you're also absolutely free to show the list and say, here you can see for yourself it's not there. But you are allowed to not produce, or you're allowed to bring in testimony to say something is not there when either it's in, either when it should be in public records and is not, or when it's in computer records and is not. If you're trying to say this is in the computer records, these files are there, you do have to print that out somehow and have someone talk about how you got it. But that is the original. To print it out, to put it on a screen, to reveal what's in a database, that would be the original, either printed or on a screen. But if you're going to say there's something is not in a database, then you can just do testimony for that. That does not violate the best evidence rule.